Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of The Bearded Apologist. Today I'm looking at 3 alleged contradictions that have been advanced by a number of people, but more recently and perhaps more popularly as of late by a YouTuber known as Alex O'Connor. He is the host of a channel called The Cosmic Skeptic. He's an atheist and he has a number of followers, and so he has advanced some of these contradictions, which I'm going to address. Now, what I'm going to be doing is actually addressing all 3, but I'm going to do it one video at a time. So I'm going to show all 3 of the alleged contradictions in the Bible that he brings up, and then I'm going to devote each video, starting with this one, with addressing each one. Now, one thing I want to say at the outset of making this video is that it's not possible to make a YouTube video that addresses every single alleged contradiction or error or mistake in the Bible. The Bible is a very large book. People have picked it apart for centuries and have found what they believe to be contradictions, errors, mistakes, those sorts of things. So, if you were to try to create a video series on that, you'd probably never get done making it. Now, what I will do, however, is in the description of this video, I will provide some links and some additional resources where you can look and say, hey, I've got a specific question about this particular alleged contradiction, and then you're probably going to find the answer in one of the resources I provide. And what I would encourage people is that if they do believe that they have come across some kind of mistake in the Bible, I encourage them to really look deeply into it, because what you're going to see in these next 3 videos is that particularly these contradictions, or so-called contradictions that Mr. O'Connor brings up, they're very surface level. He gives these contradictions and from his perspective. He states them, he moves from one to the other, but you really have to look a little bit more deeply into the text and a little bit more deeply into, say, the Greek, to get a better understanding of what the Bible is actually saying. And what you will find is that these contradictions are no contradictions at all. So why does it matter whether there are contradictions in the Bible? And the answer is very simple. We believe as Christians that the Bible is the inerrant Word of God. It is handed down from a perfect, holy God of perfect, omniscient knowledge, and that it was written by humans, but it was written at the inspiration of God. So for there to be mistakes in the Bible would mean that God would make mistakes, would mean that God would therefore be lacking in the holiness, the wisdom, the perfection that we as Christians believe He has. So as Christians, we do believe that the Bible is inerrant. We believe that there are no mistakes, that there are no contradictions in it, because that would point to a flaw in God. So when we encounter these items that are alleged to be mistakes in the Bible, we take it from the perspective of the Bible is written through the inspiration of God, who is holy, who is perfect, who does not make any mistakes. If there were mistakes in the Bible, then the Bible would not be reliable, and in fact it will call into question the existence of God Himself. So again, for our purposes, we're only going to be looking at 3 specific alleged contradictions that are in the Bible. These were made by Alex O'Connor in a discussion with Dinesh D'Souza. Now, Alex O'Connor is an atheist. He's the host of a YouTube channel called Cosmic Skeptic. He's rather influential in his field as far as being an atheistic influencer. His channel currently has about 943,000 subscribers. His videos have over 170 million views. So it's important to address these. And again, we're not trying to take a look at every single alleged contradiction that's out there, just 3 of the most popular ones that are advanced by Mr. O'Connor. So now I'm going to turn to the video and play the segment of it that has the 3 alleged contradictions that he brings up. And then I'm going to have a response to each one, starting with the first one, which concerns when Jesus was crucified. Let's take a look.
Finally, I suppose I should mention the contradictions that a lot of people point to in the Gospels. Some of these, I think, are legitimate, some are not. I'll give you some examples very quickly of Gospel contradictions that I do think are real contradictions. First, the date of Jesus' crucifixion. Was it before the Passover, as John states, or was it after the Passover, as the Synoptic Gospels state? Second, Jesus is sending out his disciples to teach. In Mark, he tells them to take nothing with them except a staff. In Matthew and Luke, he says, take nothing with them, including no staff. So do they take a staff or do they not? A pedantic contradiction, but a contradiction nonetheless, and one that's led people like Barnabas, Ahern, to write entire articles on this. And Augustine himself actually distinguished between a literal staff and a metaphorical staff to explain this difference. Anything, I suppose, except considering the possibility of even the most minor of gospel contradictions. Third, Jesus flipping the tables at the temple. A famous story, but did you know that in the Gospel of John, this takes place at the beginning of Jesus' ministry? In the Synoptics, it takes place near the end. So when did that occur? Mary Magdalene, after the resurrection of Jesus, runs to the disciples in John's Gospel and says, they've taken the Lord, and we do not know where they have put him. Strange thing for her to say if, as the Gospel of Matthew recounts, she's visited by an angel at the tomb who tells her exactly where Jesus is going, and then she's met by Jesus herself on the way to the disciples to bring them the news. Strange for her to then say that they've taken the Lord and we do not know where they've put him.
Regarding the alleged first contradiction that Mr. O'Connor brings up, he says that John, the Gospel of John, puts the crucifixion as being before the Passover, while the other three synoptic Gospels, as they are known, which is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, say that Jesus died after the Passover. Mr. O'Connor is correct regarding the date of the crucifixion in the synoptic Gospels as being after Passover. So Jesus had the Passover meal on Thursday, and then he was crucified on Friday, which is why we as Christians celebrate Good Friday. And you can actually read these in the Gospels yourself. For example, in Matthew 26, it records that Jesus had the Passover on, again, what is believed to be Thursday, what we traditionally believe to be Thursday. And then in Matthew 27, he is crucified the next day, of course, which is Friday. And you find the same thing in Mark 14 through 15 and Luke 22 through 23. So I agree with Mr. O'Connor that, yes, the synoptic Gospels say that the Passover happened and then Jesus was crucified. Now, where he is incorrect is him saying that John records that the crucifixion happened before the Passover. Now, the reason that I believe Mr. O'Connor is arguing that John says that the crucifixion happened before the Passover comes from a misunderstanding of John chapter 19, verses 14 through 16. And that reads, now it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, behold your king. They cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate said to them, shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, we have no king but Caesar. So he delivered him over, Jesus, over to them to be crucified. So that phrase, preparation of the Passover, I think is what causes an issue and what causes Mr. O'Connor to say incorrectly that the Gospel of John states that the crucifixion happened before Passover. But let's take a closer look at the text itself. Now, the Gospel of John was written in Greek, so in order to have a fuller understanding of what it's actually saying there in chapter 19, one has to have some understanding of what the Greek says. Now, if you look at the phrase day of preparation, and I apologize to anyone in my audience who may be Greek, but the best pronunciation I have for that for the Greek is that it reads periskoia. According to Strong's Concordance, this is the day before the Sabbath, meaning Friday. So day of preparation, again, in the Greek is periskoia. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. That's the best I can pronounce it. Now, by the 1st century A.D., at the time of the events that were recorded in John, periskoia had become a technical term for Friday, because every Friday is a preparation of the Sabbath, which in Jewish tradition is on Saturday. You know, there's a lot that has to be done to prepare for the Sabbath. There are meals that have to be made. It's not like today where we can make meals rather quickly. There's a lot of work that had to be done for the Sabbath, which is on Saturday, which is why the day of preparation came to be synonymous with Friday. Interestingly enough, in fact, in modern Greek, the term periskoia, again, I'm pronouncing that the best I can, but it means Friday. It is sometimes rendered as paraskevi, but if you notice, the Greek letters and the Greek word are identical in the two. So why does it not just say the day of preparation, but it says preparation of, or in some translations, preparation for the Passover? I think that's probably why Mr. O'Connor is reading this and saying that Jesus was crucified in preparation of the Passover, meaning before the Passover. But again, we have to go back to the Greek. So for the Passover, or of the Passover, the same rendering comes from the Greek phrase, and again, I'm going to pronounce this as best I can, but it's tau pascha. And it turns out that Passover, or tau pascha as it's written in John, is actually equivalent to Passover week. And that's an important distinction. Passover week refers to the 7-day feast of unleavened bread, which is known in Hebrew as Massot, and there's different pronunciations for that. And it follows the slaughtering and eating of the Passover lamb itself. So because the Massot immediately follows Passover, the week itself came to be known simply as Passover week. And there's confirmation of this idea that it's a week-long celebration. First of all, if you look at Encyclopedia Britannica, you can see that it's a week-long celebration. And you can also take a look at a Greek-English lexicon that I was able to find online, where it clearly reads that popular usage at the time that John was written, simply merged Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread into one. So all this is to say that when John talks about Jesus being crucified on the day of preparation of the Passover, this phrase is more accurately rendered in our understanding as being the Friday of Passover week. What that means is that, contrary to what Mr. O'Connor is saying, all four of the Gospels are stating that the crucifixion happened on Friday. You had the Passover meal that Jesus took on Thursday, and then you had the actual crucifixion on Friday. There's no contradiction between John and the Synoptic Gospels. So what I'm trying to get at here is that if you take a deeper look at the actual Greek and at the text and at the context of Scripture, you'll find that what appears to be a contradiction on its surface really isn't. All four of the Gospels agree that Jesus had the Passover meal, and then he was crucified the next day on Friday. There is no contradiction there. Now, in the second video coming up, I'm going to take a look at the second contradiction that Mr. O'Connor raises regarding what Jesus told his disciples when he sent them out. For now, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the second video, which I'll have very soon.